This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Promises Behavioral Health. If you're struggling through the pains of alcohol or drug addiction, now is the time to seek the help you need. Let this be an opportunity to get back on track and get back to finding the real you. You're not alone, and Promises Behavioral Health is here, and they can help you. We've worked with Promises for years. We know their teams personally. We have great relationships with them. And most importantly, we trust Promises, and so can you. To learn more about Promises treatment options near you, for you, or your loved one, here's what you can do. Go to promisesbehavioralhealth.com/soberguy. It's promisesbehavioralhealth.com/soberguy. Or you can call 888-205-1890. That's 888-205-1890. Tell them that you heard about them from that Sober Guy podcast. This morning and every morning on the way to the gym, I drink a no-carbs company. NoCo, as it's also known by the can, is a beverage packed with BCAAs, that's branched-chain amino acids, vitamins, and 180 milligrams of caffeine. It's sugar-free, and I promise it tastes amazing. NoCo is made with green tea extract and 4 different vitamins, and it's now available in 5 delicious flavors. You have Limon del Sol, which I like a lot, Miami, which I love, the Caribbean, which I love. Do you say it Caribbean or Caribbean? I guess it depends on who you are and how you want to pronounce that. You're free to choose. Tropical and Peach. All NoCo BCA products are carbonated, they're sugar-free, and they're low-calorie. The serving size is 1 12-ounce can. And check this out. They also have caffeine-free options in Apple and Caribbean for those of you who don't do the caffeine. For more information, if you want to order a case of NoCo, here's what you can do. You can go to NoCo, that's NOCCO.com, and you can pick up your favorite no-carbs company drink today. That's NoCo.com, NOCCO.com.
That Sober Guy podcast contains adult content, merciless truth, and emotional nudity. Listener discretion is advised.
I'm Shane Raymer. You're listening to That Sober Guy podcast, and we help people stay sober. If it's your first time listening, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here today. Our guest today is Pete Sousa, and man, let me tell you, we had a great conversation. I'm so excited to introduce Pete to the show today. Let me give you a little background on him. Well, first and foremost, thanks again for tuning in. If you've been listening for a long time, thank you so much for supporting the show. If it's your first time listening, like I said, I really am so glad that you're here. You're here for a reason. It's not by accident that you showed up today to listen to the conversation with Pete and I, because it's a good one. Pete's from the great city of Philadelphia. He graduated from the University of Richmond. He attended there on a football scholarship. He worked in public relations in the NBA for the Charlotte Hornets and Philadelphia 76ers. And he later moved into a career in television news as well as a sports commentator for ESPN. And Pete hosts a great podcast on Rogue Media Network called The Payoff with Pete, which I just had the opportunity to be a guest on, which was amazing. We had a great convo on Pete's show. Him and producer Mike on there. A little shout out to Mike. So hopefully you go check that out. I'll put all the links to everything we talk about today in the show notes. And check out The Payoff with Pete. Make sure you subscribe to the show. We're going to get to Pete in just a minute. First, if you're tired of drinking, we have a 30-day program designed to help you quit drinking for 30 days or more. It's called Quit Drinking Dude, the ultimate men's guide to quit drinking alcohol and stay sober for 30 days or more. You're going to get 30 podcasts in 30 days, as well as exercises and a great community of men in our locals Sober Guy men's group to help support and guide you through those first 30 days. So if you want some more info on that, you can go to www.quitdrinkingdude.com. That's www.quitdrinkingdude.com. Last thing, follow us on Instagram at That Sober Guy Podcast. You can join us once again in the Sober Guy Men's Group on Locals. You just got to download the Locals app. I'm so excited to introduce Pete to you today. There's some dudes who you just hit it off with and you just vibe so well with. And when I was on The Payoff with Pete on Pete's podcast, I really felt that vibe, as well as having Pete on Sober Guy today. And I think you're going to pick up on that as well and really enjoy this conversation. So sit back, grab something non-alcoholic to sip on, and enjoy the show. I think that's why people like podcasting too, is that or more of a longer format, a real conversation, an authentic conversation. It's not a bunch of chopped up, clips of something. So people can really dive into that, and they can feel like they're actually a part of the conversation. I know that's what drew me to podcasting, especially commuting for so long. I would sit there and then I was hearing stuff. I was also learning too, because I listened to a lot of entrepreneur podcasting as well, just in like how to start a podcast back then. But that part was so fun too. It was motivating.
Yeah. Totally. And you start to realize, for me, like you can learn, like you learned, like through podcasts, you really can. And you can also, that the long form, you discover more truths over time, I think. Because I grew up, especially after I got sober, I started to listen to Howard Stern a ton. And like some of his interviews are so great and they're long as shit.
Yeah.
And, and that's like, sometimes I'll turn on a podcast that I really like, and I'm like, oh man, it's only 45 minutes. That's the time that I know I really am into it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. That's funny. We just had let me pull this up here. I just had a review on iTunes the other day, and it was, we love to get the 5-star reviews, right? This was a 4-star review, and I said, man, why the hell did the guy leave a 4-star review? What's up? He said, I keep listening if I'm interested, but I wish the episodes were longer. I said, oh, okay. And so you just proved it right there. I mean, the guy, Steve, the audio guy is who left it. So thanks, Steve. I appreciate that. You're right.
Yeah.
You're on it, like that long form. I mean, that's like Rogan, right? Rogan will go like 2-3 hours sometimes, and I have to chop those up. It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Me too. And you can piecemeal them, right? You can go back, or if you have a super long drive, you can listen to the whole thing.
Totally. Yeah. If you're commuting for a while, or you're going out of town or whatever, that's always a good spot too. When you said Stern, man, do you remember Hank the Drunken Dwarf?
Oh, dude.
He was Hank the Angry Drunken Dwarf. Dude, that guy was insane.
And he was angry.
He was pissed, man.
And he had incredible knowledge of music trivia, like nobody better. So they would have Hank in there, and he would dominate. And it's so funny, it shows we've got it somewhere in there if we can just rattle it free.
Oh, I know. Yeah. I know. It's like there's a lot of intelligence packed into some of these crazy minds of ours, but it's like you said, it's just almost trying to find a way to access them and put them into more of a healthy format.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that we have, everybody that I have come across, really, I mean, we all have gifts, like God-given gifts or whatever you believe in, but you come to this world with certain things you can give. And if we're just clouding it with alcohol and just pouring, right, like drugs and alcohol and every emotion we have, then we're not, like, none of those gifts are able to come to fruition. You're the one that told me last week, what was it like? It's like the alcohol. What is it? Alcohol. It's like it eats your soul.
Yeah, it's body eating spirits, and it suppresses our consciousness. So you're right on point with that. Like it literally suppresses the true nature of what we can become, what we strive to be, who we want to be. Those gifts that you're talking about, like that. It definitely. I know it did that to me. Like it just made me. I think we talked about it on your podcast. Like we have these things we want to do, but we just dream about them. We just talk a lot about them. We don't ever do anything with them when we're actively drinking because we're not actionable, We're just stuck. It's the worst.
Yeah, and the motivation you get from like drinking or drugs, that's like finite, dude. That doesn't last. Like I can get drunk and have the courage to do something I wouldn't do, or I can, snort coke and stay up all night and work on something. But at the end of the day, like, I can't do that forever.
Yeah.
It's not sustainable. Yeah. And like, that literally crossed my mind when I was out there. I remember thinking like, I saw something, a documentary once and they talked about, eventually an addict is going to run out of whatever it is they want. Everybody, you're always going to run out. You don't really run out of this stuff if you want to work it, the recovery stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a daily, like people say, how you stay sober? And I say, well, I mean, I don't drink. I stay sober. It's not so much like that I even focus on that. It's just it's just the way I live my life now. You know what I mean? It's transitioned into this whole, it's a lifestyle. Like that just, it's not even a thought so much anymore, and I say that with caution. I'm always aware. But dude, my life is so much better today without that shit in it. Like, good Lord.
Well, yeah. And you talk about it's like you kind of build a routine and you build a life without alcohol.
Yeah.
I got a buddy of mine who's just been sober about like 4 or 5 months. And he's like, I just, I keep hearing it from him. And that's why we work with other people. Cause he keeps talking like, I feel so good. I feel so good. And man, you and I, we don't know, or we do know, but it's been a while since we woke up totally hungover.
Oh,
and
yeah.
There's no, like, if you think about it or process through going through a drink, like, man, that feeling, could you imagine like having gone out and then that feeling when you wake up in the morning? Oh, it would just be like, cause I really do think I forget how bad hangovers suck.
Yeah. Yeah. And excuse me. That's why it's so important when we talk to new people and we're able to be of service, because not only do we get to be there for somebody, right, but they also remind us of what it was like, so we don't forget, in that time. And that's some powerful stuff, just being able to do that too, to have that reminder, because we will forget.
Well, yeah, and that's how we're wired to forget. That's my left my own devices, right? Like I'm just going to try to get drunk and high all day. That's what happened to me. So I have to have a complete program to flip it on its ear. And like you said, part of that program is going, working with others, getting the meetings, all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into that a little bit deeper, Pete. Like we've kind of scratched the surface here, and I'd love to hear more about your background, and then maybe take us back to when this kind of, or what your mentality maybe was like as a younger person. And then how did you get into, having your first drink, and then we'll kind of roll from there.
Yeah, sure. I was a lot, you and I talked, and I was a lot like you. I love sports. And that was like my number one priority kind of as a kid, I guess. I just was crazy about sports. I love playing sports. And, but I was one of those kids, like, I was super hyperactive. I couldn't sit still. And the first time I ever had drugs or alcohol, it's been a little bit since I told this story, but I was one of those ADHD kids. And I was like such a, for lack of a better word, just a spaz. And, so they put me on Ritalin, and I can totally remember going to get I get it once at home, the Ritalin, and then once at lunchtime at school. And I can remember going to the principal's office to get it from a Catholic grade school, right? St. Thomas Good Counsel, and being like, looking forward to it. And then taking it and thinking like, man, I'm better than I was before. And I think two things happened for me as a kid through that. Now, dude, I was predisposed to be an alcoholic. It's all through my family. Yeah. But I think that, that definitely turned me on. There's, and if people, whatever, you take, Adderall, Ritalin today, I just can't do it because it was one of my hangups. And from that point forward, I think I was predisposed. I think I realized that I liked controlled substances. Or I didn't realize that, but I looking back now, I realized that. And I also, even at the time, man, I was like, I got to take something to be my best self. Like I'm not, and this is nobody's fault, right? I got to give the disclaimer, but I felt like I wasn't good enough. I have to take something to be my best self. And it that just evolved, dude. Like I drank a lot in high school, and I was, I could talk to girls when I got drunk, I could never talk to girls, never. When I would go to a dance in 8th grade, I was fucking terrified. And then I started to drink, and in 9th grade, I couldn't wait to get there. And that was such an empowering thing. And, I drank on weekends, and then when I figured out we could drink during the week, we started doing that. You know what I mean? It's like when you realize you actually have a beer before noon. Like all these doors, as an alcoholic, I would go through, and you know, I was lucky enough to be an athlete, and I played football, and that was another thing too. I would take speed before I played whenever I could, and that made me feel like I played better on it. I did. And, you know, I ended up I got a scholarship to college to play football. And my first big consequence, Shane, was when I got a scholarship and I'm going to play in this Philadelphia All-Star games where I'm from, outside of Philly. And this doctor, or they had to give me a physical. And the guy giving me the physical, it wasn't like a cardiologist or anything, but he was like, hey, man, like, your heart is beating. You have an arrhythmia of some sort. Like if you're going to play in this All-Star game, you got to go see a cardiologist. And I had been partying a ton, you know, I started to take prescription pills before school when I was a senior in high school. And you know, I'm kind of like we're wearing the mask, you know, like I'm on the outside, I'm this guy who's a good athlete and I'm supposed to be like going places, but on the inside, all I cared about was getting fucked up.
Yeah.
And my ego liked football because it got me attention and stuff. And people would tell me how great I was. Or sometimes my coaches would tell me I sucked, but I like the outside world tell me I was great. And, I go to see the cardiologist and the guy's like, dude, he's like, you have something called cardiomyopathy. And you know, you will probably never play football again. And if you could have gotten this one of two ways, by alcohol and drug abuse, or like a virus going through your body.
Wow.
That would have called viral cardiomyopathy. And I was like, right away, dude, I was like, yeah, it had to be a virus, you know, like, because I did not want to give anybody the opportunity to put themselves in between me and my alcohol and drug consumption. I couldn't imagine. I know you come with it. I couldn't imagine a life without it, dude.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, just think about it. What you've said already, just about the start with the Ritalin. You know, back in the day, that you need a substance or you need something to be yourself. So, or to feel comfortable in your own skin. And that starts at a young age. And then as you get older, it progresses, obviously. And so there's never like a real true opportunity to be your authentic self in that, because you're constantly using some sort of substance as a tool to be outside yourself, you know? So that's just insane in itself, right?
Yeah. Oh, totally. And for me, you know, I didn't get to I'm still figuring out who that authentic self is.
Me too.
But, you know, but he ain't, it ain't all bad, you know? Yeah. And I don't know what, I don't know what that fear was I had. Yeah. I guess it was alcoholism that kept me from wanting to learn who I am.
Yeah.
Or learn about who I am and learn who I was. It just kept me I was just terrified of actually being who I was.
And that's what's so cool about like today, when we cut that shit out, it's like, yeah, we're both, you know, still growing in who we are as human beings, as men, as dudes. And we're trying to figure it out, and we still jack shit up. Like we're not perfect, but like we get the opportunity though to like learn and to practice and to try to do better. You know what I mean? Versus just like completely blocking everything out, which is just super unhealthy. So, man, so you find out that you have, what was it called again?
It's called cardiomyopathy. So I'd already like signed, you know, for letter of intent to go to play football. And so luckily I went to the University of Richmond, and they honored my scholarship. And so I went there for 4 years, was on a full athletic scholarship. And, you know, part of my life too, like I was very entitled, you know, I heard a guy say, and I would just say it all, born on third base, thought I hit a triple. You know, I didn't understand shit about hard work or about, you know, working to get somewhere. I was just kind of like, you know, I was a nice guy. I'd get by on a smile and a handshake, and I thought I could do that forever.
Yeah.
And so I got into college, and I just kept on with that. You know, and it's like you were just talking about, I obviously had a real tough time like anybody would, right? With you this thing that you focused on for so long, football, you can't play it anymore. And all my friends are playing, and there's a certain level of camaraderie that they're experiencing that I'm not, because I was still working with the football team. And, Shane, it's not like I'm going to a meeting or going to a therapist talking about these feelings. I'm just getting fucked up. Whatever you got, I'll take it. And I was smoking a lot of weed. You try to kind of like what you were saying when we talked last week, it's like you can just do anything when you're high, right? It's just like you're doing it during the day or whatever. It just becomes second nature. And that's not, that's no way to live. So I was just high and drunk all the time. Oh, by the way, I have a real heart defect. And it was, that's insanity. That is complete insanity.
Yeah. Wow, man.
And then I'll move forward with it. So then I get a job. I moved to New York City. I'm working I'm working for a sports agent, and everybody's kind of on the outside looking in, like, wow, like this guy's he's kind of got it going on. And man, inside I didn't really know there was anything wrong with me. I was just kind of like, ignorance is bliss. I really didn't have a bad life. I mean, anybody that came in contact with me, I would burn them probably at some point, but it was still fun at this time. And then, and I'll tell you, when I was living in New York, I started to really do cocaine, and that was like, the first time I did that shit, I was like, I need to do this every day for the rest of my life, right? I mean, really. Yeah. And I thought, like, this is it. I have, more so than alcohol, I was like, I have figured it out.
Oh, yeah.
Because this stuff can help me drink more and stuff. And so what happened to me then was I just kept at it, and I snorted my way out of a job, out of relationships. I was broke on my own, and so I moved back. Luckily, I had two good parents who loved the shit out of me. My dad was a functional alcoholic, so that is all through my family, all his family. If they didn't get sober or get locked up, they died from drinking. It's just how it was. But like we talked about with you, another similarity, as long as, he always had a job. So it was kind of like he was okay. And, because he came from that old school mindset. And back to what I was saying, I go back home to my parents, and I'm messing around, getting drunk. I'm taking their car when they fall asleep, driving down to Philly, getting drugs. And this is all like,
how old are you about this time? Like in your early 20s?
27, 26, 27.
Mid-20s, okay.
Yeah. And I had one time I went down to Philly to get Coke. I was drunk. My parents were asleep, and I was a guy who kind of like people looked at from the outside like, oh, Pete's doing okay out of college. And now I was a mess. Everybody knew I was a mess. And I drive the car down to the city to go to Philly, and I get a DUI. I pull up on a median, and I'm like, I call the police, and I'm like, hey, you got to get me off this median. I got someplace to go. And they're like, Jesus Christ, you're coming with us. So that was my first experience with AA. And because I stopped that night, or I spent the night in jail. The next morning, I went home, and I told my parents. I was lucky, man. I don't know if you had anybody like this in your life, but a friend of mine got sober. His name is Pete F. He got sober when he was like 19, because when we were taking pills and all this stuff in high school, he lost his shit, and ended up in psych wards, and then ended up in rehab, and he ended up okay. And I knew, like, wow, Pete is sober. He was going to meetings, and I called him in the fucking typical, recovery, right? The guy's at my house that night, and he takes me to my first meeting, and it starts to work. I start to go to meetings. I start to build my esteem back up, but I wasn't ready. And here's what happened to me. I don't know if anybody listening, this has ever happened to you or this happened to you, Shane, but like, I was sober for about 90 days, and I didn't feel like I was a part of. And I was I was hanging with my buddies, playing video games. I was still, my old friends weren't bad guys, but, I couldn't hang out like they could. But they were smoking weed, and I just wanted to that wasn't my problem. So I started to smoke weed, and then it took me another 9 months before I started to drink again. But boy, once I did, man, the first night I got drunk, I was looking for you know what, and it was off to the races again.
Man,
and
I don't know what it is about that drug, because I never did a lot of that when I was not drinking, but as soon as I got alcohol in me, it was like, boom, let's go. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what, and dude, it's easy to go down, down that path. And I definitely relate to you too. I get a lot of questions about this. Like, well, what about my friends and the people I hang out with now? Well, what's that old saying, number one, like, show me the 5 people you hang out with and I'll show you your future, or something like that. So we got to be careful. It doesn't mean that, like, I still have good friends that, like, I partied with. They're still my homies. Like, I still see them. I don't see them often. We don't hang out like we used to. Obviously, we have family and stuff, but, like, it doesn't mean they're bad people or they're bad dudes. We all kind of went down different paths, but, like, I literally had to remove myself from those situations, especially early on. And that was really tough to do. And so I know a lot of guys relate to that and have that question. Well, does that mean I can't be friends? Well, that doesn't necessarily mean you can't be friends. Maybe there's some dudes that you shouldn't be friends with, no doubt. But, like, it's just like you have to be able to navigate on on your own and go down your own path. Otherwise, man, like your situation, you went back and slowly but surely it took 9 months, but eventually you're right back to where you started. Probably worse, right?
Oh yeah, way worse. And to what you said, man, like you got to take a minute in my experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's nobody, dude, who I can't hang out with now. Now there's, like you said, there's certain people who are just out of my life because it just didn't work out, like there was like, there was, it was next level stuff, whether it was drugs or toxic relationship or whatever. But there's, if you're in my life today, you might smoke weed, you might do, I don't know what, or you might get drunk, but, like, you don't do it all the time. But the secret to me, knowing who I am, is I know that I can't do it at all.
Yeah.
And, like, that's hard to reconcile. Like I can't do it at all, ever. And, without, like, freaking yourself out, and being like, I'll never, ever be able to do it, but just, I can't do it today.
Yep.
If that's what it takes people to get through. And, so I started to drink, and I still kept getting jobs. I ended up doing PR. I worked in the NBA, and, that's another thing. It's like that ego thing. I thought that I was better than people. And, ultimately I just totally crashed and burned. I mean, I was out of moves, dude. You know what I mean? Like, I was out of moves. I was
you worked for Charlotte and Philly, right?
I worked for the Sixers and the Hornets. Yeah.
So which one was first? Was it Charlotte or?
So after I started to drink again, I got a job in Charlotte, and so I worked for they were the Bobcats at the time. The team had just come back.
Yeah.
And so I worked there, and I worked there from 2004 to 2007 or 8, and then I'm from Philly. I got a job. I did public relations. I came back to Philadelphia. And I worked there. I did public relations for the Sixers. And that was one of the things too. Once I got back, I'm drinking, I'm using, and now I'm back home. So I think I'm like, see, like I can still get drunk and be successful. Yeah. And man, I'm telling you, it didn't take long. I mean, it didn't take long, dude.
So were you partying pretty hard while you were working for, like, at that time in your life? Like, so you were thinking, like, man, I'm good. I got this. I'm still living this kind of party lifestyle, but I have a good job. I'm taking care of business, but that doesn't always last long, right? After
No. And then, like, the overall addict just takes over. And I knew that I was in trouble, and I didn't care. I knew that my life revolved around drugs and alcohol, and I didn't care. That's just the way it was going to be. That was going to be my life. And I remember, I would get paid. I remember in Charlotte, I would get paid on Friday. Right. And then, that day I would, cause I'd always go broke no matter how much money I had. I'd always spend all my money everywhere. And, so when I got paid, the first thing I would do was arrange for the drug dealer to come meet me outside the arena, and I'd meet him at, like, noon or whenever the fuck the guy woke up, 2:30, and that was my first priority though. Like, people get paid and they pay their bills or they pay their rent. I was like, okay, when am I going to meet Petey?
Yeah.
Outside. That was the guy's name. It was an alias, so we're okay. When am I going to meet him outside the arena? And like that was like, and it was like totally like I didn't even have, here I am, quote unquote, like I'm not under the influence at the time. I would arrange for this to happen, but I had never even had any guilt about it. It was like, I'm going to get this. I'm going to party tonight. I'm going to have fun. I'm going to run out of money. I'm going to be late on my rent. I'm going to get evicted, and then I'll move in with this girl. It's just like, dude, it was crazy. And then finally, when I was in Philadelphia, I got, and this is one thing you learn in life, and this helped me out. Not right away, but it helped me out. I got fired. I mean, they said that I was part of like, people, they let a bunch of people go at the same time, but I was one of those people. And, I mean, I was like, what took them so long? I had it coming for a while. Yeah. And, and then I was it was 3 more years of just partying and drinking and trying to make sense of it. You mentioned like, this is a kind of an interesting story, and it's just fucking worth telling. So I get back to Charlotte. And this is like, as I'm bottoming out, but the people there didn't know enough about my situation. I actually got a job working for the Hornets. I'm doing radio for them, and I'm doing radio for the Hornets, and I'm doing cocaine all the time. Anytime I have enough money to get it, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And you've been on speed, and you're podcasting, and there's something about your delivery when you're out cold. It's no good.
I cannot imagine, bro. Seriously, I think back to like when I used to just get yacked out of my mind, and like, holy shit, I don't even remember the conversations alone, like being able to like have a thorough discussion about something or be on point like that. Good Lord, It's gotta be tough.
Oh man. So it's funny. I'm from the Northeast, and we're in North Carolina. Everybody's like, man, I knew you were from the Northeast, and I remember you. I don't remember you talking this fast. And I was like, yeah,
yeah, straight, just fast forward, huh?
Oh man. So I'm doing, but I mean, long story short, I'm doing lines and, at work and going on the air and I wasn't like the face of like the Hornets radio broadcast or the Bobcats at the time, but I did pregame and halftime and postgame. And I can remember snorting lines before, playoff game and just trying to get through like my little like air checks and I was losing it, dude. And I was like, I just want a vodka tonic or I want off the planet. And as I'm thinking this, I'm standing by the court and, Michael Jordan owns the team, and he walks by me, and he just knows my face because he knows me from I work for him. And he kind of nods, and he pats me on the back. And when he pats me on the back, he's patting me on the back, just kind of like saying, "Hey, get the fuck out of the way. He's going to his seat." But he pats me on the back to kind of, how people do that, they'll pat you and move you over.
Yeah.
And he pats me on the back, and I like jumped, I was like so jumpy. And I remember thinking like, I got to get out of here, like. And this is a moment that probably should have been one of the best moments of my life. I always loved sports, like we talked about. I'm working, I'm on the radio, and all I wanted, dude, was off the planet or another drink. And that's where this shit takes you. And eventually I just, to wrap it up, I just ended up going home. Again, right? Because I had a contract. They didn't renew my contract. I don't even think I had a contract. I was like an hourly employee, and I go back home, and I was just so done. And I was going to meetings, and I don't know if you've ever done this. I couldn't stop. I'm going. I'm trying to get sober, and then I'm leaving, and I'm high. Did you ever have that?
Once I stopped this in September, my date, September 11th, I didn't really go through that since then. But in the beginning, yes, I went to a couple, like Seth actually took me to a couple meetings early on. And I remember sitting in there just going, man, I'm not like these people. Like, I'm good,
Yeah.
I don't have this, and then, sure as shit, I'd be out, drinking that night, doing the thing. But I didn't have it. Maybe as much as you're describing it, where it was a consistent thing where I was going to meetings or anything like drunk or anything like that. But I just wanted to back up real quick just with the Charlotte thing real fast.
You can ask me whatever you want.
Okay. So I want to point out too, like how the insanity of that, like you're in what some people would think is just like this, I mean, it is like, what a great position, a great opportunity to be with the NBA organization. And then let alone it's owned by Michael Jordan. So he's, in the vicinity, and you have all this opportunity and just so much to live for, I guess, but at the same time, you can't even embrace it. You can't even enjoy it. And you really don't even care if you're living or not at that time. That is it's so insane when we think back about it. And to hear you say that, it's crazy.
Zero gratitude.
Yeah. Zero.
Again, zero gratitude. And I try to use that patience. I try to use the patience we learn when I'm around younger people in general, people who may not know any better, because I know I sure as hell didn't. It took me, I am a very slow learner, and it took me a long time. Like you and I talked about, we still get jammed up and we still jam shit up, but I'm way better than I used to be. But I will hear somebody pop off, whether it's somebody I work with that's younger, and I'll be like, how dare they? That's my first thought. And then I'm like, dude, when you were their age, I can't even imagine what I was like to be around. I know people say I was okay and whatever, but I don't think that I was a very tolerable person to be around. And, it goes to what you're saying. There's no gratitude. There's just zero. For me, it's like I just had zero.
Well, it's like perspective too. Just zero perspective. Yeah. Like no maturity either. I know my 20s were just a wreck. It was just one big party, and so there was I was trying to be a grown man, but I was 16, or 12 some days. No perspective on life. But what's funny is at the same time, no perspective on life, but thinking I fucking know everything at the same time. It's like, dude, are you kidding me? Is
that just a life thing in your 20s? Like,
I guess.
In your I guess, man. Because I thought I didn't know there was anything I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I didn't know anything.
Nothing. Yeah. I just had no clue, man. And so to bring it back to the gratitude thing, like when we do gain some general perspective on how valuable this life is, how short this life is, how the value of time, how it's irreplaceable. And so these moments that God presents us to be in, whether they're with family, a job, a relationship, just taking a walk with your damn dog down the street or something, man, those moments, they're so precious. We only get to do them once. And so like the Michael Jordan moment for you, that happened one time in your life. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
Unfortunately, it didn't quite go the way you would have wanted it to, but at the same time, at least you have perspective now, and you're able to see, okay, boom, I learned from that. And now, you have opportunities to appreciate things better. But dude, I love that story. Thank you for sharing that too, because there's a lot to it.
And there is a lot to it. It's kind of like the ending is, I'll just fast forward. And we'll go back through how I got sober. I won't take forever, but I'll tell you.
It's all good.
But when I get sober, I'm probably 3 years sober, and I'm working back in basketball, and I see people from Charlotte that I worked with before, and they can tell I'm different. And I've already written amends letters to these people, told them, just did the deal. And
you're back.
They hire me back.
You're back in Philly though. At this point,
I was actually, yes, I'm living in Philly. But I'm working like freelance stuff for the NBA. I'm working my way back.
Okay.
And the guys from Charlotte who I kind of worked for and they let me go or didn't rehire me, they're like, hey, come back and work for us. We see you. You got a light in your eye. So I go back now. I'm 4 years sober. I'm working in Charlotte. And I remember one time, it was before a game, Michael Jordan and this guy, Buzz Peterson, they're walking on the hallway. Again, Michael don't know me if he fell over me, but he's got a feel. Is one of the guys that work for him. And the guy, Buzz Peterson, walks by me and he says, hey, Pete. And Jordan slaps me on the back again. And this time I'm sober. Oh, and I remember thinking like, thank you, God. And again, I'm just like a peon. I'm doing like little bitty radio stuff. But I was like, thank you, God, for putting me in a position to understand, because I was on fire. I still, now I don't know how you are. When I was 4 years sober, I was I was more grateful than I am now. And I need to rediscover, that's just me being real honest. I kind of need to get back to work in certain areas of sobriety.
Yeah.
But I certainly had it at that moment, and I was like, man, this is
so wait,
great.
so I'm an asshole because I spoke too soon. So this actually happened twice in your life. And the second time,
yeah, kind of.
I mean, kind of, but
honestly,
yeah.
You couldn't fucking make that up. And to tell that story is almost awkward because it seems like, but it's true. It's what happened. That's what happened.
Yeah.
But to get there, I'll just quickly tell you, I bottomed out, and I was going to meetings. Like I told you, I could not stop. And then this is where the magic starts to happen. I asked a guy to be my temporary sponsor, and he's like, okay, let's go to a meeting tonight, right? And I'm like living with my parents. I got nothing going on. I'm hanging with some seriously unsavory characters. And the guy picks me up, the temporary sponsor, and I'm on like, I stole some of my mom's like Klonopin. I've been like, sneaking like vodka or whatever. I probably smell like shit, but I think I don't because it's vodka. And then, right? And then like the vodka Red Bulls before work. And cheap vodka smells like shit for those who don't know.
It does. It comes out of your pores. There's a scent to it, and you're like, and you think you're so smart too. You're like, oh, vodka, I don't even stink. But man, when you smell somebody's drinking vodka, you can smell that shit, and it's gross.
It's disgusting, and it's very obvious. So, anyways, this guy doesn't want to go to a meeting. He wants to go to dinner, and I'm like, fuck, I'm gonna have to sit across from this dude for like an hour, and I'm sitting across from him, and I don't know if the guy, I don't know to this day what exactly he was thinking, but he told me his story, and part of his story was he went to rehab, and he said to me like, I think that's probably what you should do. That was my experience, and it worked. And dude, I came home, I was 33 or 34, and I like put my hands on my hips, and I said to my parents like, I've got an idea. I think I should go to rehab. And they're like, fucking thank God, dude. And I call, and typical alcoholic, I'm like, all right, just give me a week. So I went down to Charlotte. I didn't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of, but somehow I put together enough money to party for a week. And then I came back in November 7th, 2011. I checked into Cairn Treatment Center in Pennsylvania, and my life totally fucking changed. It was just amazing. First of all, I really believe I was done, and whatever gets you there, dude, whatever gets you to rehab, whatever, I remember, I think I may have mentioned this to you. I remember talking to a guy about, he was kind of facilitating me going to the rehab, and he mentioned that they give you stuff to help you off the alcohol, like tapers, like Librium, like Valium. And I remember thinking like, well, when I get there, I'll be able to get high. What, it's like whatever gets you there. If you have a husband who can't stop drinking and he needs to drink a bottle on the way, I've been told that's not, I know guys that are sober today, many years, that's how they got there. So whatever gets you there. And when I got there, dude, the biggest thing, Shane, I can tell you is I started to follow suggestions. And when I was finished my 30 days there, a couple people were like, you probably shouldn't go home. You should go somewhere else. There's a long-term recovery center in Maryland. It's basically a fucking halfway house. And I went there, and and they were like, you got to get a job. I was like, I don't need to get a job. Guys are working at 7-Eleven and shit. And I'm like, if you could get, this one guy had a job at Hollister, right? And you would have thought he was like, hosting the Tonight Show. It was like, wow, this guy works at Hollister. So I ended up getting a job at KFC for like 4 months. I worked at Kentucky Fried Chicken, and it was exactly what I needed.
Really?
It was exactly what I needed. Yeah, I mean, I remember showing up there and being so, you're sober and you relearn how to live, or you learn how to live. And so, like, I was sitting in front of this fucking cash register, like I was getting ready to fly an Ep406 or whatever kind of plane. I was like, holy shit, dude. I was so nervous. And if the line was long, sometimes like the fight or flight, I would just go to the bathroom. I'm going to the bathroom. They'd be like, dude, you're going to the bathroom. There's fucking 20 people in line. I'm like, I'll be right back. And I had to relearn how to live, dude. And I always tell people at the end of this time, when I was finishing up at 7 or at KFC, I remember this, you get your fear back. I was working with a sponsor. I'm going to a ton of meetings. I'm living in a recovery house where I have this camaraderie. It's unbelievable where I'm going home and I'm talking to other alcoholics, guys who want it, and I'm feeling good about it. So I'm like, this shit's working. And one of the last things that happened to me at KFC was this guy was going through the drive-through, and he was being a total dick. He's like, I have the headset on, I'm walking around. He's like, hey, where's everybody? I'm waiting for a while. And I get on, and I'm like, sorry, sir, one of the chickens got loose in the back. And the guy's like, chickens? I'm like, dude, I'm just kidding. I'll be right there. Yeah. And it's like, you start to find yourself again. You start to have fun. And man, it's, this life is a great life because we're here, dude.
You just reminded me of Rule 62, one of my favorites. Don't take yourself so damn serious, and that it's such a great rule and a great tool to have, because in those times when I start going down that path, like getting mad or frustrated, whatever, I go, wait a minute, I don't have to take myself too serious. Rule 62. Is it really that big of a deal? And 9 times out of 10, it's not. So it just reminded me of that, like, man, you're starting to have a little fun again. You're starting to be able to joke around and like, hey, and so what, you didn't stay there much long after that though,
No, I got done. I spent a month in the rehab and then 4 months in the long-term recovery place. And then I got out of there and I lived with another sober guy, my buddy Tim, who's still sober today.
Nice.
Tim and I ended up in rehab together, and we ended up at the recovery house together, and we lived in Jersey City, New Jersey, and we worked in a kitchen for a guy who was at Karen, the rehab with us. He owned a restaurant or a catering company in New York City. And when we got done with the recovery house, he was like, if you guys want to come work for me, you can work for me. Like, dude, I didn't know the first thing about working in a fucking kitchen, except for KFC, right? Maybe my resume looks okay.
Yeah.
But so we worked in a kitchen, and I got to that area. New York City is about 25 minutes, not even from Jersey City. No, it's like 5 minutes. And so I was crushing meetings, dude. And I was going to meetings. If I had to go to, if I went to 3 meetings a day, I went to 3 meetings a day, and it was awesome, dude. It was awesome, and I learned how to live, and I started to get my confidence back. And I think from all the meetings I went to, I really, really understood. I respected my disease. I started to really understand how screwed up I was and how serious this thing was. Not screwed up, but how sick I was.
Do you think you were starting to find like your authentic self? Like, is that a way to put it in some sense?
100%, 100%, dude.
So powerful.
Because you start to tell people the truth, and they don't fucking run out of there.
Like you said, you get to take that, because you mentioned earlier about having to like feel like you had a mask on, and I felt a lot like that too. And you feel like you can remove that mask and just be like, fuck, I don't even care. Like, this is me. I'm doing the best I can. Yeah. It's like it's so liberating.
And it's almost like I take that mask off every day, and I got to do it by going to meetings, because if I, or just working with other people in recovery, because if I don't, I will, I won't be myself. I won't be my authentic self. I'll what we talk about at the start, I'll people please, and I'll get myself into the situations that aren't fair for me or anybody else to be in with me. Yeah. And you just find your authentic self, and the one thing I find when I'm practicing this program is I have the courage and the strength to do things I used to either get drunk to do or just flat out lie to people and tell them that I did.
Yeah. And you can do it sober now.
Dude, it's unbelievable. Yeah. It's really unbelievable.
It's funny with the people pleasing thing, because I've had some issues myself with that as well. And I was talking to my daughter the other day, and she was having little thing with a couple of friends and stuff. And I said, look, I know you want everyone to like you. I said I had the same thing. I want everyone to like me too, still, but we have to come to a point where you have to ask yourself, do I want to be liked or do I want to be respected? And if I'm going to choose either one, I want respect. So I don't care if you like me, but you're going to respect me. You know what I mean? And with that, for me, what I've learned is that comes because I've learned to respect myself in the first sense. You know what I'm saying? So it comes back to that people pleasing part, I think. I've kind of gotten, I definitely, it still comes up, but I've gotten better with it over time because like, this is me. I mean, I feel like it even goes back to taking that mask off. It's like, this is me. I am who I am, and I'm going to speak up if I need to, but I'm always going to respect somebody as long as they show me respect. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, dude. And it's hard to do that shit. Like
it is.
It's hard. It's hard to stand up for yourself. It's easy to compromise your belief system.
Yeah.
And be like, oh yeah, like that's cool. You know, like that guy's a piece of fucking shit. And then you see the guy that's a piece of shit and you're like, hey man, what's happening, dude? You know, like, and that, so like in that it's easy to do that, to act that way. And then, but man, like,
but back in the day we did it. Well, yeah, because we could just drink about it then. That we didn't care. It was just like, we just get drunk, you know? So we didn't have to deal with any of it, you know? Man.
I mean, I know the moment I get wrapped up in it, like I can see gossip coming from a mile away, but man, sometimes I just can't help but to sink my teeth in it. And then I'll be bullshitting and gossiping, right? And then you walk away and you're like, I feel gross.
Yeah, why did I do that?
Yeah, and the more you practice, like I love what you told your daughter, the more you practice respecting yourself, it's like anything else, the easier that becomes.
Yeah.
You know, respecting yourself. It's like that muscle memory. And by the way, it feels good to do something esteemable. So you kind of understand, you feel that. And it's like, okay, I can keep this going. It's worth it.
It sounds like the self-esteem for both of us, man, in both these conversations, you know, when I was on your podcast last week and then today's, self-esteem is an issue, you know, and I just heard my old counselor in rehab, James Cantor, in my head right now, right after you said that. And we would say this in the group. He would say, and how do we build self-esteem? And everyone would say, by doing esteemable acts. And so I still think of that sometimes. And it's so true. Yeah. I mean, that's the service. That's the, you know, just trying to get out of our own damn head by going and helping somebody else. And, you know, we build it up like that and it helps. It's huge.
Well, and then how do we get drunk again? Well, we do things that aren't esteemable, and right, true. And then really, and then we build up this pile of shit that we're looking at, and we're like, oh man, I fucking hate myself. I can't believe I piled up all this shit, and then you drink.
Yep, that's it, and it's simple. That's the easy out, you know. It's the easy out. So
yeah, it really is, and you grow by going through the hard stuff.
Absolutely. That's that perspective we talked about earlier. You can look back and learn to appreciate some of the shit that you may have hated at the time, but it's like, oh wow, that's why I went through that, because that brought me to here, which brought me to there. And then now I'm at here and I could see that, you know, which.
Well, again, it goes back to faith that we have to have, which I don't have nearly often enough, but like, you know, that's a cool thing. You know, you've been sober since 2014, right? Like you have a body of work that speaks to, okay, when I have faith, everything works out as long as I'm sober and trying to do the next right thing. So it's like, but sometimes I'm way too quick to project into negativity than to, you know, lean on reality.
Yeah, I am too. I think it's natural, like to just go to like, it's almost, what's it called? It's the, not doomsday, but well, just when you're projecting,
you catastrophize. Or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Like everything's gonna, you know, just go to shit like real quick, and you have like I have those moments still, and you start getting anxiety. And it's like, wait a minute, like I have no control over any of that. If it happens, then I'll deal with it then. But I don't have any control over it right now. So I guess it goes back to being in the moment. But
and dude, since I'm sober, most of that stuff that I'm totally terrified of works out okay. Sometimes it works out great.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, God bless him. I'm not talking about him like he's dead, but Coach K is retiring, and I'm not a huge Coach K fan, but I do remember reading something once that stuck with me. He said, you know, a lot of players and people have such fear about situations, pressure that come with pressure that they're entering into. And they forget that like it's just such an opportunity. Like think about like how great it can be.
Yeah.
If you know, like if you just work hard and enjoy it and seize it, like you can come out with it. You can be Christian Laettner, right? You can hit the buzzer beater. Like it's not like you're not going to miss it all the time, which I tell myself.
Yeah, that's good. And it's, man, how many times this perspective came up? I think that's another component of it. But we like, in order to have that perspective, we have to be aware. So if we don't possess the awareness, we can't have the perspective. You know what I'm saying? So, and the alcohol, the drugs, it suppresses the awareness in the first place. So we have to start there, and then we can start uncovering. Like I love working with different dudes, and like when that light bulb comes on and it's like, oh, wait a minute, like, yeah, I can follow my dreams. I can be an entrepreneur. I can, get a promotion. I can have a better relationship, whatever it is, when I'm aware of this shit. Cause then that's where the practice comes into it, and like you and I, we practice this shit to the best of our ability. It's living life, really.
Yeah. And I love what you say, dude. Like, why not? Seriously, man, why not you? Why not me? Why not the guy you're talking to that's thinking about it? I mean, why? Seriously, why not? Again, I'll go back to my man Howard Stern. He always talks about, he was a kid and he had no self-esteem, and he was telling his mom, "Yeah, I think I want to be on the radio." And his mom would be like, "Why not? Somebody has to be." He was like, it's like shitty. And he said, even as a kid, that had such a positive impact on it, because it's true. Somebody's got to fucking do it.
It's so true. Oh, that's good. I haven't heard that one from him before. That's interesting. Yeah. Let's kind of go into, did you go to work in the kitchen with the guy that you met who said, come work in the kitchen? Like where does it go from there?
I worked. So I go to work in the kitchen, and again, like I'm crushing meetings, and I start to get my self-esteem back, like we talked about. And I start going home from meetings, and when I'm living in Jersey City, and I just start firing off emails to people, and I'm firing, people that I used to work with, and like we talked about, careers that I aspire to do, and I really start to put myself out there, and that feels good, right? The exercise of trying to get another job or trying to get back into sports, that made me feel good. So it steamrolled, and I got a job working. I love play-by-play, doing sports play-by-play. And so I got a job. I'd actually never done this before, but I got a job working in the NBA Development League. The Brooklyn Nets affiliate at the time was in, and they were the Brooklyn Nets at this time. Their affiliate was in Springfield, Massachusetts. So I got a job doing play-by-play for the Springfield Armor. And so I moved up there. I stayed in a Red Roof Inn, and then the first year, and then I got a contract. They did like a trade deal where they gave La Quinta marketing, and I could stay at the La Quinta for free because I didn't have any place to live in Springfield, and I couldn't afford it. Yeah. And I loved it. So I started to do play-by-play, and getting some real good feedback, or some decent feedback, and that's when I ended up working back in Charlotte and then now they really were the Hornets, and I'm back there. And I'm chasing my dreams, and it just, and the whole time I can tell you, Shane, I'm going to a lot of meetings, and I had looking in the rear view, a very, very strong program, a program that I aspire to have today. That I, it's not totally out of reach, but I was happy, I was living joyous and free, and I was making good decisions. When you're into the program like that, and you're surrounded by alcoholics, and you're bouncing stuff off other men in the program or people you trust, you're probably going to make the right decision. Yep. And so I was making good decisions, and from that I got into TV news, and I moved to Louisiana, and I started to do morning news, which is crazy. For the past 7 years I've been getting up at like 2 a.m. and it's crazy, dude.
That's the middle of the night.
Crazy. So, so I'm getting up at 2. I mean, this is 11 o'clock where you are, midnight where you are, and I get up at 2 o'clock, and I go to work. I was in Monroe, Louisiana. Now I'm in Waco, Texas, and I love it. I love being able to present the news and being able to make people smile in the morning. And lucky for me, it's come back around where I'm now able to do play-by-play for ESPN. I'm starting to do more games because I love doing that.
Yeah.
And
Awesome.
so the more and more I get the opportunity to do that, I love that. And of course, I've only been doing, my podcast for about a little over a year. And that was like, I had fear around that. I was like, what are people going to say? Whatever. But what did I do? I talked to people in AA or the program, and they were like, do it, dude. Like go ahead. And so it was sort of, for me, it was another one of those freeing things where, I became the news anchor with the podcast on recovery. And dude, I can't tell you, and I know this happens to you, I can't tell you how many people have been like, thank you for doing that. Yep. And it's not always like, hey, I'm a drunk and I got my life together, but it's the understanding of, I have a brother or I have a husband who died of this or who can't stop drinking. And just thank you, or my son, thank you for shining a light on this.
Yeah.
It's a serious issue and it's deadly.
Bringing it out, into the spotlight in some sense, because you're right. Like, out of all the talks and all the people I talk, even just in the grocery store, we'll get to talking sometimes, and, work a lot of the time comes up. What do you do? And every single time it's like, oh, my brother struggles with it, just like you said, or my father or my husband or my son. Everybody knows, like, when I would do these talks in the corporate space, like, I always ask them one thing, like, how many people in here know somebody who struggled with alcohol or drugs? And literally, more than half the room every single time. And I would imagine there's probably a few hands who don't go up, who are just embarrassed. You know what I mean? They don't want to call it out, but it's has such a big effect on society as a whole. And so us doing podcasts, us talking about these things, and then going outward, and not just us, of course, we're two little dudes just doing our part, but as a whole, in this whole space of people sharing and coming out, man, it's really helping to bring light to it and drive down a lot of the stigma behind it and go, hey, I can still have a great life. I just got off track for a minute and I'm gonna get back on track, and here's some tools and resources, to help do that. Do you feel like you found a lot of good? Well, go ahead. I'm sorry. I had a question, but
I was gonna just like one thing about being out there. Like there's cool ass like outlaws who are sober, right? Like people who are guys who you think, oh, like the person that's sober is buttoned up and they're lame or whatever. It's like or they're the like no, dude, they're guys like Shane. You know what I mean? Like the guys with like you just wouldn't guess like that this person would be like, no, they're guys like me. Like it's, and I think we kind of owe it to the people that are coming after us or that are on the fence to be like, look, man, like we're standing next to you in the line at the grocery store.
Yep.
And we're just like you. We're not this like far off thing that you can't relate to. Like you can. Yeah. For most parts. Okay, so back to what you were saying.
Well, now I got to respond to that, of course, too, because now you just made me think of something like I have a lot of friends in the music business, right? A lot of big bands and groups that a lot of people would know, and so I'm in these meetings sometimes with these guys, and a lot of it. And this isn't just in the music business. I think this is just probably in entertainment and maybe even some like just more low key businesses too. You would think there's this big badass image, and a lot of the image, there's a character behind a lot of that, And so then on personal time though, dude, so many dudes are sober. They don't mess with anything. Yeah. They may have before, but a lot of the time the stuff we see on TV and we hear, and I really fell victim to that as a kid, like having this idea that to be, in the spotlight and you had to live a certain lifestyle and party. And a lot of that came, I think, from, influence through media and just culture. And so I always love telling, like, especially younger kids, like, man, like that's not, everything you see is not reality. Like, that's not what's really happening. These dudes are like, they got it together. Like they're sober. They went through their shit, but they came out on top, and now they're living these, and they still have fun. Still party. Like I love partying sober. I'm gonna have a good time. I'm an animal sometimes, Yeah,
dude. And that's like, you do, man, you bring up such a good point, is like, I equated like alcohol and drugs with fun and like with celebrity and with rock and roll and with like, hip hop and punk rock. It's like, no, dude, Like that's like, sure, that's a component to it. Of course, that's the story as old as time, but it really is. There's a whole nother side of it that, doesn't get a whole lot of coverage.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that like you've really, you found your like a purposeful life in today?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. I could feel it when you're talking about it, man, just doing the news, play by play now, you're back in what you love to do, but it's in a complete different mindset and different time.
And the bottom line is, and that's why I feel purposeful, and this is so whatever, but I'm just going to say it, over the course of my life, I have had this ego and fear driven thing. Like I've got to do X, Y, or Z. I've got to succeed in sports, or I've got to be on TV, or I've got to, do this on the radio or whatever, in order for people to validate my existence. Right.
Yeah.
And that never happened, even in sobriety.
Yeah.
The one thing that has come back around and has been fulfilling for me is sharing sobriety through these podcasts. I can't
awesome.
tell you the feedback and the people, and it's not like it's overwhelming. You know what I mean? Like my inbox isn't like overflowing, but people do tell me, hey man, like this is really, and people who you'd never think, they really appreciate what I'm doing, what you're doing. And it's like the least we can do, the least I can do. So that makes me feel it. And along with being, practicing my part in recovery, that makes me feel purposeful. It's really the only thing. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit before we wrap up today about your podcast, The Payoff with Pete. It's on Rogue Media Network. I thank you so much, by the way, too. I just had a great opportunity to come on the show in the last episode. So guys, if you're listening out there, go check Pete's podcast out. Tons of good content on there. And before we have you dive into it a little bit, here goes my crazy creative, artistic, like, yeah, let's do it, like type of thing. But we should do like a panel podcast sometime. Maybe me, you, maybe we can throw in another podcast or someone, and just have recovery. We could do like a live stream or something and take questions, or I don't know, man. We've done a couple of them and I haven't done one in a minute. It'd be a lot of fun to do, man. I'd love to do it with you. I feel like we riff really well together. So, okay, cool. We'll talk about that after. That'd be awesome. So tell us about The Payoff with Pete.
I started it last February, and it was one of those things where, and it's similar to yours. When I would sit in meetings, I would think, man, I would love that, because those, when people talk and tell their stories, that's some of the most captivating moments of my life, when other alcoholics in sobriety are sharing their experience, strength, and hope. And selfishly, because I'm a selfish dude, I always want to ask questions. I'm curious about stuff.
Yeah. And
I'd listened to Howard Stern forever, and I'd listened to other podcasts. I like Bill Simmons, but he's not, I don't put him on the same, pedestal as Howard Stern, but I liked long form, and I liked getting to know people, and I liked that everybody had a story. And to me, there's nothing more interesting or inspirational than somebody's story of sobriety. And it doesn't matter who you are. And if you're somebody who's experienced some success and people might know, well, that's just more helpful, because I think that they have tentacles that can, extend all over the place. To me, it got started just by, I was interested in this. It was something that, a lot of times we end up doing stuff that we could care less about. And this was literally, I finally found, I hear people with hobbies and passions. I mean, I like to run. But this was finally, I found something where I was like, oh, I want to do this and this feels good. So that, it was kind of selfish at the same time, but I also felt like anybody I asked about whether I should do this, they all said yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then you just went for it.
Yeah.
Screw it, I'm in.
Yeah, I went for it. And I started and I started to, it's just like I said about sending the emails, you start to build momentum.
Yep. And
you start to get, just like you have. I'll do a podcast where I'm talking to a guy in my home group in Texas, and then I'll talk to a guy I got sober with in Philadelphia, and then I'll talk to Ryan Lee, and then I'll talk to Jerry Cooney, and then I'll talk to Dave Kushner, guys who people might know, and you just kind of sprinkle them all through, and it all kind of works out. It's just all kind of a beautiful spider web, just like recovery is.
Yeah, I love it, and I what I love about it too is, there's a component I think to staying away from alcohol, from drugs, from finding authentic self, from finding purpose. And part of that component, at least for me, and I feel like for you and just what you're describing, and for so many dudes out there's a missing link when we're stuck in that shit. There's a missing piece of us. And so I always tell guys, like, try to find that childlike spirit. What did you do as a kid that you love to do? And try to do that as an adult. Obviously, there's some things that might not work, but like if you skateboarded as a kid, I don't give a shit if you're 40, go skateboard a little bit, go ride around, but don't break your neck. But like, we have to find something we enjoy to do. And then maybe it's something big. Maybe it's starting a business. Maybe it's starting a podcast. Maybe it's something that we find that we're passionate about. And if it's in the space of service where we can help people, that alone will help drive us on the right path, and with, other components as well, trying to stay sober if that's the case. But when we're passionate about something, man, it sparks something that makes us feel alive again. And as men,
and it's okay. It's okay. Go ahead, as men.
Well, I was going to say, as men, I feel like when we get to be adults, we get responsibilities. A lot of, we have kids, we get married, whatever life kind of takes over, and we forget how to have fun. We forget that there's shit that we like to do. And so once we find that, again, if we've lost it, that's a really important component to me in my recovery. Like I tried surfing last year. Like I always wanted to try surfing. I didn't get the chance until I was almost 40. It's the hardest sport I've ever tried.
How'd it go?
Dude, it's so freaking hard. It's like super hard, but it was so fun. It is. I mean, we're going down in just about a week and a half, and I'm going to go surf for the week while we're on vacation, and at least attempt to. I'm probably get my ass kicked, but it was the excitement of trying something new again, and getting out there and going for it, not being afraid to suck. You know what I mean? And like you experience some of that with the podcast. Like there's fear involved. Like what are people going to think? What are they going to say? Like, but at the end of the day, just go for it. You know what I mean? Just go for it. Just dive in.
When I started to anchor the news, I first of all, I'm dyslexic. And I got a job in a real small market in Louisiana. And dude, I was so nervous. I was 5 years sober. I was so nervous. I couldn't read the teleprompter. I was horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say this, like, it's one thing, like, how like people recognize you now, Shane, and they'll come up to you and they'll be like, hey man, like, I appreciate the podcast.
Yeah.
I was the guy, you never want people to recognize you, at least if you're like in local news, recognize you and then not say anything to you and start talking about you. Like, man, that's the guy in the news. He's terrible. Yeah. Like I felt that, and maybe that's my own, whatever, my mind playing tricks on me. But anyways, but I kept going. I wasn't afraid to fail. And I got to a point where I do well enough now, like I do well enough on the air. Like I do, I have grown into, a career. I have a craft awesome. that some people say I'm good at. And dude, I had that faith and that inspiration that I got through recovery that enabled me to be like, dude, go for it. Don't be afraid to fail. And like literally, even now it's kind of silly, but I'll do this. If it's anything possible or anything positive, I'll usually just say yes. And even if it's a pain in the ass, I'm just like, well, that's the job for future Pete, right? Like he'll shut up to do it.
Yeah.
And then the day comes and you got to go through with your obligation. I heard Jimmy Kimmel say that. It's a job for future Jimmy. So that's, you just got to fulfill it. You do the right thing and you show up. But yeah, man, I totally relate to that. The part about don't be afraid to suck, man. Yeah. Don't be afraid to suck.
Dive in.
And don't let your ego keep you from going for it. Because even now today, my ego, I don't want to screw that up because people will make fun of me. It's all, all bullshit.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, like the fear gets the best of us. We're like, I'm not even going to try it. But man, we're going to make mistakes. If we're going to make a mistake, we might as well do it full force, So I'm just going to go for it and adjust along the way. But I absolutely love chatting with you, man. And it's a lot of fun. And I feel like we riff well, man. And you're such a professional, bro. And I really do admire you. And I just want to tell you, thank you, man, dude. Oh, you are, man. You're great. You're great at what you do. It's nice too, just to kick back and chat with somebody else who talks for a living as well too. It's a lot of fun, man. There's an art to it, man. It's not easy. It's something that you kind of work and practice at and get better at. And you do a great job, dude. And I want to thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Well, dude, I told you, first of all, you're welcome anytime. And, I was researching I had Vance Johnson on here, one of our brothers in recovery. And I was researching Vance Johnson, and I found your podcast, and I was running on the Katy Trail in Dallas. And I was like, God, this guy is awesome. And then I went down the rabbit hole. I was so excited that there was this guy out there with charisma and, had a platform and was talking to people about sobriety, people who I'm interested in. So, thanks, thank you, dude.
Yeah, it means a lot to me, man. I appreciate it. I got to I've only sat on the tarmac in Dallas. I still haven't been to Texas officially. I got my good buddy Ray, man. We've been buddies since the first grade. He lives out in Katy, Texas, I think, which is
Katy, yes, right by Houston.
Yeah, right near Houston. And so I got to hopefully make my way out there at some point and feel the Texas vibes, Yeah. So,
yeah.
Well, where could folks reach out to you? We'll put all the links today too, guys listening for Pete, for the podcast. We'll put them in the show notes. But any projects or anything you wanted to mention real quick before we wrap up, Pete?
No, I mean, if people have ever want to get in touch with me, just DM me on Instagram, and the Payoff with Pete we try to get them up Tuesdays or Thursdays, but yeah, we've got about at least one a week going back to last year. So there's a catalog there, just like yours. That's always fun to discover something and to go back. There's a lot of interesting guests, pro athletes, some actors, some musicians, and then guys just like me or you, who have a message to share. But that's about it. And then hopefully you'll hear me or see me on your TV doing some play-by-play. Outside of that, man, I'm just trying to do it one day at a time.
Heck yeah, man. I'm with you, bro. Yeah. So we'll put the Instagram handle in there, and we'll put all the links in the show notes one more time. And Pete, the Payoff with Pete on Rogue Media Network. Be sure to check out the podcast. Give Pete a follow. Dude, it's been so nice to have you on, and we'll chat a little bit about maybe some little awesome side, what's it called? Interview panel. We'll do something fun, man. Yeah. That'd be awesome, dude.
You got it, man. Thanks so much, Shane. I appreciate it.
All right, Pete. I'll talk to you later, man.
All right, Shane. Later, brother.
See ya.